So tonight our topic is busyness. So raise your hand if you're busy. All right, everybody's gonna raise your hand. So our discussion tonight is, revolving around keeping a focused marriage in our busy lives. So it's a hard thing. It sounds good in theory, and that's what we're here, to talk about is, this busy world, the busyness we find ourselves in whatever stage of our marriages, and even before we get married, and how we are attempting to stay focused on our marriage through the craziness, through all the busyness. So, a quick question for those of you all. I know we've got a lot of unmarried in here, but those that are married, before you got married, describe the time between you and your spouse. And when I say that, did you ever find yourself thinking, man, I'm just too busy to spend time with them when you were dating?
For the most part, when we were dating, it was like, there's other things we should be doing, but instead we're just hanging out.
Yeah, exactly. So you find yourself, or you found yourself, just, if there was any spare time, or you made time, like you're saying, you put that as your top priority. And then you get married, and then what happens?
I don't know.
You don't know? Something happens. Yeah. So that's, what we're here to talk about.
Change.
What's that?
Priorities change.
Priorities change. Yeah, and we're going to talk about that a lot tonight. And no matter where you're at in your marriage, I think it's always helpful to flash back to those years, to that time when you were dating, courting. Paul, is that right? Did you call it courting? Okay. And whatever that time of basically infatuation is what it is, and it's a great time. But something, life happens, right? And children happen, and careers, and all these things, and it results in what we call busyness, whatever other words you might want to plug in there. But all joking aside, it is a tremendously dangerous thing for marriages. And I think I know it's something good to talk about in a setting like this, to talk about with your spouse, and just have that open communication and dialogue about how busy we are, and how we can manage our time better, how we can continue to put each other as a top priority instead of letting each other fall down. And when that starts happening, then the two, start to separate further and further, grow further apart. So, one author I was reading, said that the things that take our time, the things that, as he put it, steal our time, he called them time bandits. So, just rattle off some things that steal your time, steal our time. Just in general, away from your marriage, those type of things.
Screen time.
Screen time, yes. So, what?
Hobbies.
Well, you already said it, 4 kids,
Yeah, kids.
and what else they may do,
Yeah,
school,
their activities,
whatever.
school, yeah. What else? Work. Mm-hmm. Are these things inherently bad? No? I mean, most of them, no. Again, most of it is life and what happens as our lives just continue to go, the things that naturally happen. Screen time, technology. I put down here overcommitment. I think that's something is a good thing to talk about between spouses. And these, a lot of these things, are they planned, or most things planned, or are most things unpredictable when they steal away our time?
What's the plan?
Planned, yeah. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Some things can be unpredictable. I think most of the things we're talking about are planned things. So what does that tell us? We choose things. We prioritize certain things. And a lot of it, comes down to the choices that we make, the choices our spouses make. So here's a good quote I ran across in one of the marriage books. It says, busyness is like a corrosive agent. It takes away the things we really want in the relationship and zaps our energy. When you lose your sense of humor, life is too busy. You get short with each other, taking the fun out of marriage. You get task-oriented, losing affection for one another. Agree? Disagree? Agree? I see some heads nodding. I should have highlighted some things in here, but I think it's such good things to monitor in our marriages that, he's usually cracking jokes, or she's usually doing this, much more affectionate. And then when you start snipping at each other, those type of things, what this author is saying is the root cause, and a lot of that is just this slow, corrosiveness of just being busy. And the busyness is, again, as it's corroding, it's just breaking you further and further apart. So I liked how he put that. Any thoughts on that or anything so far? Just on busyness in general? It's, there's some scriptures that, deal obviously with priorities. Nothing that comes out and straightly talks about being busy. But I did pull this out of Ephesians, talking about just living. And Paul says there, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. So, this is about life in general. Of course, we're applying a lot of this in our class, these principles towards Christian living, towards our marriages. But when you read this, his instruction there to the Ephesians, what are the principles involved here? How do you read that affecting, or should be affecting, our marriages? So think about busyness. Think about making the most of opportunities. What comes to mind?
Spontaneity kind of comes to mind. Like, are you taking the time to, give a little peck on the cheek when you pass them, even in the busyness and the tasks of things? Don't lose that sense of spontaneity to embrace the moment of our life.
I love that. Very good. Thank you, Sean. Anything else that comes to mind?
I see it as in truly, because you're gonna have those moments with each other, but it's whether or not you're like already looking forward to the next thing or trying to plan what's going on. So trying to actually like sit down and enjoy where you are in that moment. That's kind of what I take from it.
Very good.
I think my brother-in-law uses the word being very intentional, and I don't actually love the way using it all the time, but I think it is a good thing to think about being very intentional. So I think it doesn't go opposed to spontaneity and those things, but I think it's also being intentional to say, we're going to have a date night.
Yeah.
Once a week, or once a month, some goals, things like that. We're going to, spend this time with whatever it is, because if you're not intentional about that, before you know, you'll turn around and be like, hey, we haven't had a date night in 3 months, or 6 months, or a year, or whatever that looks like. So I think making the most of every opportunity involves something, or could be benefited by some intentionality and forward thinking and goals and things like that.
I definitely think it can be a good mixture of both, being intentional and spontaneous, that you don't let these moments pass by, but you're also planning and making, a concerted effort towards spending time together. Very good. Any other thoughts on that?
How does advance the gospel fit in here?
Advancing the gospel?
Yeah.
I think it's what I've stated before, and I think one of the things about this class is how do our marriages, convey to the world the gospel, the way we're living, the way, Scott's mentioned this a lot too, is our goal is trying to get each other closer to God, closer to heaven. And I see that, or I see it in a lot of marriages in this room too. The gospel living out through life. Any other thoughts on this?
I think it's interesting in this verse, it says plainly, if you're not careful with how you're living,
Yeah.
then you're foolish.
Yeah, very, very good. There's no gray area. That's very true. And so that also leads into, in Hebrews, looking at the definite negativity, the foolishness that can happen in marriage when you're not living wise, but you're living unwise. And that's in Hebrews 13, verses 4 and 5 says, marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure. For God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral. Keep your lives free from the love of money, and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So, again, this isn't talking specifically about busyness, but it does talk about the outcome. I don't think I'm taking a big stretch here, but the outcome of that corrosiveness, the driving away, leads to infidelity. If money is keeping you busy, go, the busyness drives away. He's talking about, the love of money here too, and contentment. So much involved in this section here. And finishing it, what the author says here is how God's always going to be there for you. Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. And in the moments of busyness, our busy lives, busy. This concept of God's always there. And I thought of Psalm 46, be still. Be still and know that I am God. Do we tell ourselves that as we're going out, throughout our days, our busy days? If we forget something, we're, unintentionally forget something with our spouses, or we're not, acting the way we're supposed to be because we're so busy. These verses talking about, to be still, and knowing that God is not leaving us, God is not forsaking us. Any other thoughts on these couple verses we just looked at?
Randy,
Yeah.
what I just think about this is, and this is my experience, so it's not to say it's others, but my parents divorced. I'm the youngest, and as soon as I was out of the house, my parents divorced. And as I retrospectively look back at it, I think they gave me a great childhood, but they didn't spend time together. And so their marriage was our guest kids. And so as soon as the kids were gone, they looked at each other and said, you know, what do we have? So that's on my mind when I think about this, and I think about not allowing the business of kids or the business of life to not retain that marriage, because you know, and because I help people with retirement stuff, I often communicate to people, when you retire, you still have a 30-year adult life left on average. And so there's a lot of life left. There's a lot of life left after kids. And so I think it's just really important to not let busyness of life and busyness of kids be those things to not maintain how critical that marriage is, because that's your lifelong partner that you're going to be with a lot longer than kids. And so, you know, it's not exactly that verse, but it came to mind as I was thinking about that, just how critical it is to maintain that relationship, because otherwise you turn around and realize we don't have any relationship left, or you could.
And this is later in my notes, but making sure that your kids are witnessing that, you know, as they're growing up. Are they witnessing that in the household? That the two of you all, the two of us, are spending time together, making time for each other? Or do they just witness that we are basically their servants, you know, and their chauffeurs and all the things that we're willing to do for them, but are we elevating that above our relationship with our spouse? I think that's really, really important. Okay, so I got this out of, I'm sure some of y'all read His Needs, Her Needs. So how many hours a week, this is not me, I'm not stating this. This is from the author. I forgot to put his name down here, but His Needs, Her Needs. How many hours a week does a couple need to spend in communication? And I don't have the details, whether that's texting or whatever, you know. Yeah, Natalie knows the answer. She can't answer. She cheats. Throw out some numbers.
15.
Oh, Shelley. You cheated. You cheated. 15. All right. Does that seem like a lot?
It's a good guess.
It is a great guess. She's exactly right. Does that seem like a lot? Let's be honest. Seems like a lot to me. Seems like a lot to Natalie when we talk about that. Yeah, actual communication. Like, if you're taking, and I don't know if he's talking about couch time, or I doubt that, but it's got to be a mix of different things. Now, how many hours, according to his research, how many hours per week do couples actually spend in communication? I don't know if I told you this one.
3.
I was gonna say 4.
3, 2, 4, 6. Go down. 1. Yeah, there you go. 1. On average, is 1 hour per week. So I think that is a wake-up call, you know, that there's a lot of times that might be something that is lacking. And I think that's a wonderful thing if you've taken Growing Kids God's Way, is the couch time exercise and that part of that class, and getting where you are committed to that sitting down and having that face-to-face communication with no distractions. So now the author did, you know, recognize, set a realistic goal. You know, if it's something that is lacking, don't say, well, yeah, next week we're going to do 15 hours, because that's not realistic. Or if you're doing less than 1. So set a realistic goal and, you know, try to build on that, whatever you think would be best. But it's better to, you know, take those small baby steps and build on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that number including the time that would be spent when you're eating dinner together, or
and talking over.
See, he didn't go into all those
To me, it seems like that number is, you know,
See, I think what it's like, if it's just one-on-one eating dinner, yeah, but if it's the kids are dominating the conversation and the table and all that, then I don't think he would count that. So I think it would differ depending on the situation. So how many, going back to the beginning of class, when you were dating, how many hours per week did you spend in communication? Constant. That's what I said. Yeah. You couldn't count, that high. It's, again.
One of the reasons I didn't know anything about Wendy, now I know all I need to know. There's nothing to talk about.
Very good. I like it. All right. So if we say that we don't have a 100% focused marriage, unlike Josh and Wendy, right? So what are things, or what do we do to have a focused marriage? Like real life, realistic things that we can do.
Plain Bible study.
Plain a Bible study.
I mean, just make sure you do that. That's going to be part of that communication time.
Put God first. Plain a Bible study.
I would echo that a lot. There was a time a few months ago when Josh and I would get up every morning before I went to work, and we'd spend 20 or 30 minutes together in the morning doing a devotion. And it was really nice. First, we started our day in the Word, but like we also had that time together, and we've gotten away from that, trying to get ready and do all the things we need to do. And I really want us to get back to that, because it is something that when you're going through a devotion or a Bible study, like you're finding out their thoughts on things or their opinions, and you're asking each other questions. And I don't know, I just feel like that's probably like the best time you can spend in a day, is just like start your day out in prayer, in the Word, doing some sort of devotion or Bible study. It really is. I can't say enough how important I think that is.
That's the problem though when you're a person like me, that I am not a morning person.
so I'm doing my very best just to get out and get going and wake up. So we've had to do those things in the evening, and
That's just, and Kim's the same way.
fortunately.
I have, with just reading through the Bible and here, in the Chronicles now, and so it's a practice that I started the first of the year that I continued up to this point in time, and I do it at about 5:15, 5:30 every morning. It's the way I start my day, and you know what? Having done that, I have found that it makes my day go better.
Very good. What else? So some of the things we talked about that were stealing time, how would make recommendations on how to prevent that from stealing so much time?
I know the screen time's been mentioned already, but I think one of the things Marissa and I have tried a few times, and we probably should get back to doing it, is having a time where we shut off our phones. Whether that's an hour after the kids go to bed or whatever, or even just a time in between there where we're not going to be on our phones and that sort of thing. And just doing that, I find that you start talking more, because that's the natural thing, is you just pull this out whenever it's a quiet moment, just pull it out.
Yeah. I had that on top of the list too. Just put away the phone, turn it off. What are some other things?
Kind of a combination of prioritize and budget. We talked about a few classes ago about finances in marriage, and you got to prioritize where your funds are going to go. Well, you have so much time. There's some things maybe just get cut out. I'm just not going to do those things anymore. So I'm going to make sure I have an allotment for this amount of time with my spouse. Then I'll see what's left over.
And a lot of times those are those are good things you're cutting out. I mean, it's like if you find, you find yourself at your kid's school constantly, and then you realize, well, there's no other parents doing anything in this classroom or something like that. I know a lot of y'all have found yourself in that situation that, you know, you just start putting more and more and more on yourself. And they're, again, not bad things, but they're taking you away from, you know, spousal time, from the marriage, things like that. Somebody already mentioned, I think Richard mentioned this, you know, date night. I think that is huge. Setting down, hey, we are going to have a date. It's going to be, you know, this Friday night. You know, got the babysitter, all that's taken care of. I think is a huge one. What are some other ones? Anything else y'all can think of?
It's not true for everybody
Mhm.
in the job that they have. There are a lot of jobs that will take as much time as you'll give to it. You could really leave at 8 hours if you really spent during that day, I'm really going to be focused.
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh, you know what, it took me 9 or 10 hours to get everything done. Sorry, honey, I couldn't get home. So being more diligent at work, more effective, not wasting time, and being able to spend more time at home.
Wherever you are, be there.
Yeah.
Not
Be
keep
present.
thinking about other things.
Yeah. Exactly. When you do have that time together, be there. Very good. You know, I wrote down not just date nights, but getaways. You know, are you taking a couple of nights or one night and getting away from your job, from the kids, and just committing that time to each other?
You know, it doesn't have to be an expensive event. It does, even like swap off with another couple. We'll watch your kids this weekend while you go out, and then vice versa.
Very good.
It doesn't have to be
No
an
cost.
expensive thing.
Yeah. Now, these things we're talking about, are they necessarily easy? I mean, some of them can be, but some of them take effort. And if Lawrence had a great lesson about, you know, if you find yourself failing, you know, what did he say to keep doing? Just keep trying, the perseverance. And I think that speaks a lot, too, about the perseverance of our marriages. Again, as your children are getting older and older, are they witnessing that? Are they witnessing, you know, mom and dad are working hard at this. They're working hard to make time to be with each other, and they prioritize that time. And not that it's always perfect or it looks pretty or anything like that, but they see that perseverance as they continue to grow. I know it's something that, you know, has definitely stuck with me, and it is such a valuable, you know, influence that our children need to see. Any other thoughts on this before we move on? So, you know, getting over the busyness and trying to have a focused marriage. I do want to look at this out of Proverbs, and one of the authors was talking about nurturing oneness in our marriages, and he used Proverbs 24, verses 3 and 4. And there it says, "By wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. Through knowledge its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures." So, you know, I think we can substitute or put in there with house, a home, marriage. I believe it's all together here. I don't think it's too far of a stretch. But if you look at these qualities of knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, And I think it's worthwhile to break it down, thinking about our marriages. And when you look at knowledge, this idea of, know your responsibilities, know my responsibilities. Are you constantly, picking at your spouse's responsibilities or thinking about that, focusing on that instead of our own? Understanding, embracing the difference in each other. I really like this one. Looking at those differences through the eyes of God. So do you take a kind of an objective view of your spouse, that the way God views your spouse as his child? I like that. And appreciating the difference between the two. And then the wisdom is taking those things, taking what you know, taking what you're supposed to understand, and then acting on them. And that can be in a lot of different ways. We've talked about some of those already. But, acting in certain thoughtful, ways that are intentional and being spontaneous, that, giving compliments, specific compliments on how good or how thankful you are for what certain thing that they do, whether it's around the house or a job or whatever it might be. Do you say thank you? When you make those compliments, do you touch each other? And that might sound, well, yeah, but do you really think about that? An intentional, touch and things like that, a hug that, is showing that love, understanding, knowledge of your spouse. Are you praying with each other? Are you looking for the good in your spouse and not focusing on the bad? Any other things that come to mind when you think about, look at these things, think about them? Any other things that come to mind that way you can act on expanding your knowledge of your spouse, your understanding of your spouse?
I think one thing that has helped in our relationship is that we ask each other about our day every day.
Yeah.
Because that's literally what your spouse is experiencing when you're apart from each other. So asking them about their day helps you understand what they've been through that day. And it doesn't necessarily have to take a long time. And it can be as simple as, hey, what'd you have for lunch today? It's a good way to start, but I feel like it helps us understand each other's experiences better.
Yeah.
And goes back to that understanding of the person.
Yeah. Because to me, and Natalie, she'll tell you, she'll be like, it's Natalie, you don't care where I ate lunch. She does. I'm like, it's so boring, but she does. And now I realize over the years, I realized that as Shawnee said. Yeah, she wants to know what I did, and I appreciate that more and more. And that's again learning, having an understanding of each other. Any other thoughts or comments on that?
Randy, there was a book several years ago, and Janie Ward brought it up to me because as per busyness, I didn't do it well. I did not manage that well. And one day I went to her and asked, I'm just not doing, and she said, there's a book out called The Best Yes. It's an old book, but it's about you're not choosing between bad things, but you have to put priority on the best yes. And the gist of the book was to be in constant evaluation. It's back to that Ephesians verse about living carefully. And it's in constant evaluation, reevaluation, and change it. And I appreciated her.
Anything else? Thank you all.
Not
Yeah. go
totally
ahead.
to this point right here, but, and I would assume that there's lots in this room that have really good marriages and really good spouses. I'm gonna embarrass my wife. And I have a really good spouse. I think everything we're talking about, even in a so-called really good marriage, is the perfect way for the devil to come in because, again, I'll embarrass my wife. Because she's so sweet, gives so much grace, et cetera, it can become easy for me to sit and do nothing. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
What I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So even when we feel our marriages are strong, I think that's a potential ploy for the devil to say, yeah, hey, Eric, just sit back and do nothing. You got a real sweet wife. That makes sense.
Take advantage.
Yeah.
That's a good, honest point about that.
Well, and I think to that point too, like, you can't sit back and just coast through marriage because we can't all know it all, right? So, seeking out classes like this or retreats or things like that, like, it's always good to go and just kind of have that time together, freshen yourselves up on what's going on with each other, and not to say like, oh, we don't need that, It's always beneficial to do those things, but you've got to seek them out and make, be intentional with that, and do those things. But I think that's a great point. You just got to constantly be looking for those opportunities.
Right. And be, as Eric said, I think, be aware that there's always going to be something trying to prevent it. Again, it's not something that you might expect, but it could. There's always going to be something out there trying to get in the way of that oneness. Very good. Very good. All right, well, I'll leave you with an acronym for time. Oh, that's the wrong one. Maybe I don't have it. There it is. Okay. So time. Together, interest in your spouse. Basically make time, manage to find time, and eliminate distractions and hurry. So I thought that was good to, spell out what we're trying to focus on is making time for each other. And to have that focused marriage is exactly what it takes, it's time. And as you know, time just flies by and there's never enough of it. So we have to make an effort, a purposeful effort to make that time for each other. And I appreciate everybody's comments tonight. It's great to have these discussions that, to help each other out and to be honest about it, because it's a hard thing. I think hopefully we all can admit that we're all working together, to make it better. So what else? What else do you have? Because that's all I've got.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that our generation and our time right now, that we are busier than previous generations and previous times, or do you think it's just shifted to different things?
What do you think, Paul?
Well, a lot of the busyness has to do with how you manage your time. One of the things, and I'm probably going to talk about this a little bit in the last two class periods, but one of the things that has affected marriages through the last century or two is the economy and how we have changed the economy. As you all were talking And as I look in here, I think there's only one person in here right now that this relates to, or two people. I wonder now and in the future, as more, as people are working at home, how that relates to what you're talking about busyness. And I assume the person who asked this question basically could be working at home as opposed to somewhere else. Is that right, Derek? Could you be working at home?
Not as much anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not talking about from COVID. I'm talking about the field of work you're in. I thought maybe you could work at home as well as away.
I could, but.
Yeah, but your wife doesn't want you there. Yeah, I think there are a lot of things in our culture that over the years have changed. So those who have kids, some maybe will have restrictions on how many events they can participate in the summer and in the school year. Some have no restrictions, so if you've got 5 kids, they're going in 5 different directions. I know a family that's got 4 kids right now, and they say 1 kid each summer can participate in something. Others think that's really restrictive. I think we have, I guess, to try to answer the basic question that Derek asked, I think as individuals, we have the potential to have more control over our business than we exercise.
I agree with that, 'cause I think society has changed. Everybody's probably the same level of busyness, but the way marriages have changed. I think mostly for the good, not for the bad, because the place of women in marriages and things like that has drastically gotten better. I'm talking like big pieces of history here, but everybody always, I think, has always claimed to be busy. You know, you can always occupy your time with something instead of what you should be doing. So, do you have something?
I was gonna say, my grandma and I had a discussion about busyness years back, and she raised her kids 60 years ago. She talked about the busyness that she had. She didn't have a car, but she had 5 kids. So she said her busyness was all at the house, making the clothes, canning the food, things like that. Now we have the conveniences, I can just go to the store, but I have a car, and we have things outside of the house. So we talked about how we're both busy moms, but just on 2 totally different levels.
Good point. Thank you all.